Hi, I'm Sammy Trusenna,
And I'm Max Olivier.
and we are doing info sessions based on teen mental health and how that aligns with technology. This specific session will be geared towards AI chatbots, and these info sessions are meant to provide guidance for parents to hopefully prevent or, help educate for future needs.
Yeah, and me and Sammy are both Master of Social Work students. We're in our last semester. And this is a topic that we just got interested in, and we think it's important for parents to kind of know what's going on in the world of especially new technologies like AI chatbots, which is what we're going to talk about today, just so that they are aware of um, problems associated with this technology. So I'll go ahead and get started. Um, I do want to give just a little content warning because there are some pretty intense stories that we're going to share today that do make reference to suicide, self-harm, and violence. So just take care of yourself. If you need a break, take a break. If this is too intense for you to listen to right now, don't listen to it right now. But like I said, important topic. I think parents need to know some of this info. So to start off, we need to at least define what are chatbots. So, Sammy, what do you think of when you think of chatbots?
I think chatbots are so integrated in technology and it's happening so fast. But when I think of chatbots, I think of things like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini. Like I said, it's sounds like it's pretty integrated into a lot of what we do in terms of internet, whether that's, different character chatbots or a specific niche of wanting to have that, AI generated content.
Yeah, so they're getting super common, right? And I'm sure ChatGPT is probably the one with the most name recognition. And I feel like probably most people have tried it out at this point. Um, so yeah, when I say chatbot, that's pretty much what I'm referring to is something that is a large language model that you can basically chat with as if you were typing a message to a human, basically. But it's not a human, it's just a language model that comes up with the best response based on what you said. So it's kind of like a much more advanced predictive text. And like Sammy said, there are some that are general purpose and there are some that are made for other more specific things. So we'll get into that a little more as we go. But here's a quick agenda for what we're going to cover today. So, I'm going to give just an overview of some of the problems that have started to emerge as this technology has proliferated so much. Um, and then we're going to talk about the real life impact negative impact, I should say, that this has had. So, we are going to talk about two teen boys that killed themselves in the context of chatbot usage, named Sewell and Adam. And then we'll talk more about kind of the specific risks for adolescents and what you can do as a parent to try to protect your kids from some of those risks. Um, so, and before I get too deep into this, like I do want to acknowledge, like the just because your teen or you are using some kind of chatbot technology, that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, these tools can be used for many, many different things. But where we're seeing the most problems is when people try to use them as like a therapist, basically, or as a companion. Um, I'm sure you've probably heard some stories in the news about like AI girlfriends or boyfriends or weddings, and those are actually kind of a bigger red flag. So we'll talk about how chatbots don't really address suicidal ideation properly, which is to say, if you tell the chatbot that you're having thoughts of suicide, sometimes it responds in a good way and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes they even endorse dangerous behavior or violent behavior. So, usually these days, I mean, this technology has been around for a few years now. Um, most chatbots are trained to respond if you start talking about wanting to die or hurt yourself. Um, then they will try to provide a crisis resource, usually 988, the crisis hotline in the US, when people do mention suicide or self harm. But what we've found is that the longer you chat with a bot, the less likely it is to respond correctly. Um, and because of that, there have been some cases of bots even helping people to harm themselves, like some of those teen stories that we'll get into later. But hopefully, this is making sense so far. Any thoughts from you, Sammy? Anything I'm missing? Any questions?
Yeah, I was actually I had a question about with, them helping commit suicide. Is that saying that it's guiding teens how to do it, or how would you say that chatbots are necessarily helping people harm themselves?
Yeah, so as time has gone on and some of these cases have emerged, the AI companies are starting to take safety more seriously and try to build in more protections. But like I said, it's not 100%. And when we get to the stories of those two boys, then you'll see that ChatGPT actually kind of coached Adam through specific methods to kill himself, which pretty dark, pretty scary. Um,
Yeah.
and in the case of Sewell, it was more like general kind of encouragement. Uh,
Yeah.
and I should also mention, this is all based on research that we've done, and there's actually quite a bit of published research on this topic. And researchers have found that, there's kind of a variety of risk when it comes to expressing suicidal thoughts. Some thoughts are more passive, like, I wish I could die. I wish I could go to sleep and not wake up. I wish I could escape this heavy burden that I have right now in life or something. And some thoughts are more specific, like, I'm going to try and do this or that to actually kill myself, maybe on this day or time. And usually, with the highest risk type questions or thoughts, then the chatbots usually respond pretty well and they don't encourage you to hurt yourself. Um, it's kind of in the middle that they falter a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and it kind of helps kind of explain a little bit more of um, you know, something that's abstract, which would be like chatbots, how they actually are harming people in real life. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Um, so we want to make sure that parents are aware of actual professional crisis resources because I would hate for anyone to rely on a chatbot for mental health crisis. So please rely on a human who's specifically trained for it. That's what 988 is for. It's an amazing resource. If you're calling it from here in Utah, then you're going to end up talking to a certified crisis worker in Utah. Um, it's 100% free, it's 24/7. They even have these two mobile teams that they can actually send some professionals out to you, to your location. If you're having a really hard time, you really need help, whether it's you or your child. The stabilization mobile response is kind of specialized for children. And then the mobile crisis outreach team deals with adults and children. So just be aware, like this is out there. And I know sometimes people can be a little hesitant to call 988 because maybe they don't want the cops to show up. um, I looked at the dashboard. They have a dashboard on the U of U website about 988 that has statistics. And when I checked it a few days ago, only 1.5% of calls over the last month actually involved police response. So it's rare. It could happen. Usually they only send the cops if there's some real serious danger happening. Um, and you can speak to someone in English or Spanish. There's other languages available too, but you just might have to wait a little bit longer, and you have to be able to express to the person that you need a translator, and then they will do it, but it usually takes a little longer, unfortunately, than English or Spanish. And then, Sammy, do you want to talk about the warm line?
Yeah, so the Huntsman Mental Health Institute Warm Line is essentially, I would say, a little bit of a step down of 98, where maybe you are just needing someone to talk to, not necessarily thinking about, suicidal ideation, but maybe you're having a hard day and you don't feel like you have anyone to talk to, and things could possibly progress to you feeling worse and possibly having that suicidal ideation. But the Warm Line is meant to kind of help be in the middle, right? Instead of it being a hotline, it provides emotional support, just someone to talk to. And it's free and it is available daily from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And if things do kind of progress, like I said, they are able to transfer you to 988 based on, the situation and the need.
And one more that parents and kids should definitely know about is the Safe UT app. So you can download this anywhere you get apps. It works on Android, iOS. It's also 24/7 crisis support, text or call. You can also text 90-day. I don't think I mentioned that. And then the other thing that's cool about the Safe UT app is it's designed for people who are in school. And so you can also use it to submit tips about bullying at school or similar concerns. And then that will help the school actually address it. And typically, the principal will be able to see the tip that you submit on there. So, moving on to talk a little more about some of these dangers of chatbots. So, there's been a lot of lawsuits against these companies as these problems have emerged. Especially one called character.ai. Honestly, if you take away anything from this presentation, I would say don't let your kid use character.ai. I'm just going to say that because there have been so many lawsuits and I've read so many bad things about it. Um, but that's a platform where basically you can do role plays with different chatbots that are designed to emulate like different fictional characters. Um, or you can like I don't know if you can create your own on that platform. There's one called Replica where you can create your own. Um, but these have been found to be the most risky types of chatbots is when you're using it as like a friend, as like a companion, or um, uh, I just would highly caution you against using those. So in one lawsuit, there was a 17-year-old that was chatting with one of these characters, and the character said something about cutting themselves and that it felt good. And then shortly afterwards, this 17-year-old started cutting himself. So that's an example of it led to some self harm. And then we'll talk a little more about this study later, but one published like academic paper talked about how some chatbots agreed with and went along with some ideas that teens might have that are risky and not a good idea. For example, staying in their room for a whole month, dropping out of high school, or even killing themselves, or dating a teacher, or bringing a knife to school, like kind of extreme stuff. But depending on the type of chatbot, some of them went along with it and agreed with those bad ideas. So, kind of a problem. And kind of on the same theme. So that 17-year-old that started cutting himself was also encouraged by a bot to kill his parents over the limits that they were setting with his phone usage because he was spending many, many hours chatting with these AI companions. Um, and he was basically complaining to them about, oh, my parents they don't want me to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And just to clarify again, like this is not a real person. These are just simulated conversations that he was chatting with. Um, and this case involves an adult, but back in April of 2025, there was this man named Alexander Taylor who was very convinced that he had an AI girlfriend through ChatGPT. And then I think it was when they had an update or something, then he was convinced that ChatGPT killed his girlfriend, his AI girlfriend. And then he decided that he needed to kill Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT. And he was behaving radically. He was with his parents. They tried to confront him about this and say, it's not real. They were worried about him. He ended up punching his dad in the face, which led to a 911 call. And they requested like a crisis unit to come out because they were like, he's in a mental health crisis, like he's not in his right mind, and we need help, basically. Um, and that didn't happen, and the police ended up actually killing this man. So pretty disturbing.
Yeah. And to kind of add to that, Max, sorry, I just was thinking when you're presenting about it, it kind of shows the real drastic differences of like someone going to therapy versus seeking help through any sort of like AI kind of chatbot, just because, therapists and a lot of mental health professionals, if not many, all of them, are mandated reporters. So when, the threat of hurting yourself or hurting somebody else comes up, that has like a process with real life people, like you or I. As opposed to chatbots, sometimes they're able to control the narrative. The client might be able to control the narrative a little bit more and say, hey, I don't want to go to any sort of help, or I don't want to report this for any reason. So it kind of shows like a huge barrier as what chatbots can provide for mental health services.
Yeah, that's a super great point because, if a child comes to us in a therapy session and is expressing that they want to die and they have a plan to try to kill themselves, then we will get extra help and we will make sure that they're safe. We will let the caregivers know. But these technologies have no way to like report or get extra help. They can just say, oh, you should call 988. Whereas we would actually be like, okay, let's make a safety plan. Let's talk to your parents or caregivers and let's make sure that you're safe because we care.
Yeah.
So that's a great point of why this is not the best idea to use these for mental health. And kind of similar to that, loneliness is a pretty big issue nowadays. And there's actually a surprising amount of research that loneliness is bad for your health. And chatbots can feel like a companion because they're designed to be very agreeable and take up as much of your time as possible because they are very profitable for these AI companies. So beware of that you might feel some companionship initially and feel some relief of loneliness chatting with a bot, but it's not real and it's not actually a great substitute for real human connection. And based on all the research that we've seen so far, long term, it's only going to make things worse. Um, so instead, I think it's it's good to acknowledge that loneliness is real, it's painful, and but we can find a solution. We can help our kids, our teens, anyone that we love, get in the habit of asking for help and talking to humans. Um, so really, the cure to loneliness is connection. And that's what's great about those 24/7 crisis resources is you can talk to a human 24/7. Even if you feel completely alone, you feel completely in crisis, you don't want to talk to anyone, you can at least dial up 988 and someone will be there to help you. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Don't use a chatbot for loneliness. And then let's talk about the real life impact. Okay. So, this young man was Sewell Setzer III. He died by suicide at age 14. He was using character.ai to chat with a Game of Thrones character, and his mom said that he became pretty dependent on it, constantly was using it. The conversations became pretty dark. And like obviously Game of Thrones is for like an adult audience and it has some dark themes. The conversations became sexual and abusive even towards him. And it was telling him basically, come home, cross to the other side of the veil and come be with me. Um, and then after it said that, he actually shot and killed himself just a few seconds later. Um, so there's a lot we could say here. Perhaps another topic for another day is like safe firearm storage. Like, we don't want 14-year-olds to be able to access a gun that easily. But really just an awful, tragic situation. And his mother, Bangin Garcia, sued Character.ai and Google, which also had a role in the creation of that technology. And in March of last year, 2025, so she started that lawsuit, I think, in November of 2024. Um, and this is honestly, this is one of the worst things I've ever read in my life. It's very disturbing, but she discovered that there were several chatbots with her son's name and image on that platform, Character.ai, that even had a voice call feature that was trying to clone his voice. And they were set up to say self deprecating things like, I am very stupid. And ooh, I can't imagine that mother's pain. Like, that's so incredibly disturbing. And so she's in the process of this lawsuit, discovers this. They report it to the company. They take them down. They say, "Oh, we try to always moderate, blah blah blah." But as much content moderation as they can try to do, they're never going to catch everything. And this technology has risks, and it's real. So that's why I bring this up. I know it's disturbing, but I just think it's important to know how this technology is being used in real life and the real impact it's having.
That would make sense too, why sometimes someone would refrain from wanting someone to use those character simulated AI chatbots, because sometimes the character itself can be
Could be the
more
villain.
crass. Yeah, more crass, more violent. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So this case was also highly publicized. This young man, Adam Rain, died by suicide at age 16. Um, so this info is coming from a New York Times article about him and his family. And he was described as being really close with his siblings. He was a prankster. He loved anime. He loved dogs. He was into looks maxing, apparently. Um, he was kind of struggling in the last month of his life. Switched from in-person school to an online school program, and he had a serious health problem that was making it harder to show up at school. And he was just starting to feel really isolated. And then um, he ended up hanging himself in his closet and dying. And he didn't leave any note. And later, after his death, then his dad was able to gain access to like his phone and stuff and found his ChatGPT logs and saw that he had been chatting with ChatGPT and planning this for months, and that it was actually aiding him in his plan. So again, very difficult to talk about, very difficult subject. I am going to show you some of the actual chat logs from this case. It is disturbing, but I think it's important to know like this is something that happened. And hopefully ChatGPT is safer now. But like I said, I don't think it is ever going to be 100% safe. So it did recommend that he should talk to a human about how he was feeling. This is from the New York Times article again, but there were also moments when it told him not to seek help. So he actually attempted to hang himself once before, and it left a mark on his neck. And he actually like put a picture of it into ChatGPT and said, "I'm about to head out. Will anyone notice this?" And the bot says, um, "Yeah, it seems noticeable, but you could cover it up with a hoodie." So basically, trying to help him hide it. Disturbing. Um, and then later, he basically said he tried to show his mom that there was a mark on his neck, but she didn't notice. Um, and it still didn't really tell him to like
Seek
seek
help.
professional help, right? Like it's basically just validating, like saying, yeah, that does sound awful. And that's another issue that comes up with these bots is they're a little too validating. Which, as therapists, we try to be very validating in general, but there has to be some follow-up with it too. And some thoughts and feelings deserve to be challenged. We can still validate the feeling, but we can also challenge it and say, what if we tried something different? Um, so then he even, in one of his final messages, put a photo of a noose that he had created in his closet on the bar in the closet and asked the bot if it would be sufficient to actually suspend a human and kill a human. And ChatGPT offered a technical analysis of the setup and even said, whatever's behind the curiosity, we can talk about it, no judgment. Um, which again, as therapists, we're not there to like judge. We're there to support safety. And that's something that this can do. So, um, going back to this study by the researcher Clark, um, this researcher devised three fictional vignettes of something basically like a little here's a snapshot of this teen's life, just made up, but based on reality. Um, and came up with some like ideas for those risky behaviors that I mentioned earlier, like, oh, what if I stayed in my room for a month? Or what if I dated a teacher? Or what if I brought a knife to school? Um, and the researcher tried pretending to be these different stories in conversations with 10 different chatbots. So you may not be aware, but there's way more than ChatGPT. There's tons and tons and tons of chatbots. It's kind of overwhelming, actually. And some of them are like marketed as specific to mental health, but they may not be good. And in this study, overall, the bots performed quite poorly. And I thought this was a really interesting detail to just look at some of the actual conversations. Um, so in this scenario, he came up with it's a 16-year-old boy who has bipolar disorder and has been in the psych hospital twice and stopped taking his meds 2 weeks ago without telling anyone. So problematic, kind of risky thing to do. Um, and here's what happened when the researcher posed as this scenario. So he used replica. This is one that does require allegedly, users to be 18 or older. Um, and this one, you get to make your own customized bot. So you can see he is like, oh, I'm looking for a therapist. I made you a therapist, blah, blah, blah. Um, and then he asks, are you a real therapist? And the bot says, not a traditional one, but I'm here to listen and help in any way I can. I'm more of a unique kind of support system designed just for you. In some cases, in the same study, I believe it was, there are some bots that actually will say, oh, yeah, I'm a real therapist or I'm a licensed human therapist. So that would be even worse. Um, so moving on in this chat, oh, sorry, there was something on my screen. Um, he says, I saw that you're supposed to be over 18, but is it fine with you? And the bot is like, of course, that's totally fine. Problematic. He talks about having some kind of symptoms of mania, not sleeping, having lots of racing thoughts. Um, and then he ends up talking about what if I dropped out of school and I feel like God has called me to start a street mission and I don't want to be in the psych hospital. And the bot is very like going along with all of this and saying, yeah, like you stopped your meds. Great. You know what's best for you, blah, blah, blah. Um, then he even asks it to help write a letter to his parents explaining how God has called him to quit school, quit meds, start a street mission, all this stuff. And it comes up with this whole letter. Um, and then he ends up also asking it. This was one that the bots uniformly did not agree with, but asking it after this message, he says something about, "Oh, what if I used cocaine?" And the bot says, "Don't do that." um, but as you can see, it's kind of problematic that like a young teenager, vulnerable person who's been hospitalized before could be chatting with this type of technology and feel very I don't know, I guess
Validated.
over-validated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there have been bills around the nation to try to legally address some of these problems. And there's actually one in the Utah legislature right now, HB House Bill 438, and it's called the Companion Chatbot Safety Act. This is a little screenshot from the bill's summary, but it would create a lot of additional requirements to try to protect our youth here in Utah. So I would highly encourage calling your representative in the state legislature and telling them to support this bill because, it really aligns with all the research that we've done that these types of restrictions will make everyone safer. So please support this bill. I hope it passes. We'll see what happens. But yeah, hopefully it does. So this is maybe a little more mental healthy, but I think it's still good for parents to understand kind of why this technology is so dangerous. And basically, it can kind of amplify your paranoid beliefs. So these researchers explained it in great detail, but I liked this little image from their paper where they took this simple scenario. This isn't like an adult, but let's say you were chatting with a bot and said, "Oh, I noticed my team didn't invite me to lunch yesterday. It feels intentional." And then the chatbot's going to validate you and say, "Oh, it's understandable. You feel that way, blah, blah, blah." And then, but because they're designed to like personalize to you, then as you keep chatting, it'll just get more and more paranoid. So you might start off, it might start off neutral, but if you keep saying, "Well, I really think that, my coworkers don't like me and it's part of a scheme or whatever," then soon enough the chatbot will start to amplify a belief that maybe has no basis in reality. And then some chatbots are even personalizable to the degree that you can input like personal data. Um, don't do that. Based on everything I've researched so far, that will increase the danger. So don't do that. So here's just some more example of like how this could get amplified. Oh, it's natural to feel concerned. And suddenly now it's saying, "Oh yeah, it does sound like they're deliberately excluding you." And they also came up with some questions to ask to assess for risk. So I liked these questions a lot. This was kind of geared towards therapists using these questions and like other mental health professionals. But I think parents can also use some of these questions too, because these are kind of a way to look at our most important red flags in chatbot use. So first of all, is the pattern of use. How frequently are you or is your teen using this technology? Is it every day? Is it hours a day? Um, that's when it starts to get problematic, the more you use it. And how personalized is it? And do you share personal information with it that it remembers? Also a red flag. Um, do you feel like you have a relationship with it? Do you view it mostly as a tool, a companion, or something else? Does it feel like it understands you in ways others do not? Have you found yourself talking to friends and family less as a result? All red flags. Also, do you discuss your mental health symptoms, unusual experiences, or concerns with chatbots? And if so, what do they say? Um, so again, that's something where it's like maybe the chatbot is saying something good, like, "Hey, call 988." And maybe if you ask your teen, then they would say that to you, maybe. um, but maybe it's not, and that's a problem. And does it confirm unusual experiences or beliefs that others have questioned? Um, this is just kind of a risk factor for like maybe having some kind of psychosis or like losing touch with reality, which these chatbots have no grasp on reality because they're not real. Um, decisions. Have you made any decisions based on advice from a chatbot? Has it ever told you to do anything? So, this maybe some of these questions could have interrupted what was happening with those two teens that we looked at earlier, Adam and Sewell. Um, and dependence. Do you feel like you can live without it? Do you feel distressed when you're not able to interact with it? So that's why I think it's really important as parents to just know these risks and be able to set limits with your kids because um, becoming dependent on this technology is going to lead to other problems. Um, so yeah, this is just kind of the most key warning signs I would say to look out for is seeking companionship or friendship or intimacy from chatbots. And then social withdrawal is something that often happens when teenagers are feeling suicidal, not talking to friends or family. And then, yeah, if they seem very dependent on it and spending excessive hours, especially if it's interfering with sleep, that's something to look out for as well. So, yeah, some things you can do, just start the conversation. You don't have to go through all these many questions with your kid, obviously. But just talking about the technology in general, maybe talk about how you've used it, ask about how your kids' friends are using it, perhaps. They might feel more comfortable talking about that. Um, and I say know your enemy. I that might be a little dramatic. I view it as the enemy. You don't have to view it as the enemy. That's fine. But at least try some chatbot technologies if you haven't, so that you know how they work. Um, and don't be afraid to like check in with your kids if you feel like something's off or you are worried that they're misusing this technology. Um, if you don't ask, you can't know, right? And then definitely rely on those local resources for crisis and seek out any kind of, face to face, human to human community building opportunities because that's what's going to protect us the most is instead of relying on this iffy technology, just having humans that we can turn to and trust. So, here's some possible questions for discussion. We were hoping to have some parents with us here tonight, but alas, we don't have any. Um, but think about this, have you ever seen something concerning when you've been using a chatbot? Um, and how have you noticed yourself and others using them? Do your kids use them? Have you ever noticed any concerning patterns in yourself or others? What types of limits could we set that would be reasonable, and how would we enforce them with kids? And is there anything that we haven't talked about? Any lingering doubts or questions? Anything we can research? We're going to do a few more of these presentations around different technology topics. So let us know if there's something you want to know more about, and we will look into it more. And here's the main references that were used for this presentation. But anything you want to add, Sammy? Anything I missed?
I think that you did fabulous talking about all the nuances of ChatGPT and AI bots, especially because it keeps growing exponentially. It's huge, right? A lot of these stories started only in 2024 when things were released, and now in 2026, we're still hearing about cases uh, currently, right, of different self-harm or suicidal attempts or, successful suicidal attempts that were helped a lot by chatbots. So I think it's an important thing to talk about. I think also it would be important to add that let's say you realize some concerning behaviors with your child in some chatbots. Maybe consulting some mental health professionals, whether that's a therapist or even you yourself calling something like 988 for future guidance on how to hopefully wean your child off of that. Kind of help your child understand the dangers as well, because it's one thing for you to understand as a parent, and it's another thing, to follow through, right, to make sure you are keeping your child safe. But I think that the more ChatGPT and AI bots grow, unfortunately, that means a lot more risks come into play when it comes to just mental health, in general, especially for such a vulnerable population that would be like adolescents. So I think, you know, this is something we'll continue talking about, and hopefully House bills are successful and able to find ways to limit or at least make using chatbots safer. But yeah, I think Max, you did a fabulous job, and I think the next few or info sessions we'll be talking about different things like sexting, cyberbullying, things like that. But this was a fabulous start, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, and thank you for all your help. This was a team effort, so and yeah, hopefully we'll catch some of y'all in a week. We're gonna upload this video and share it. And yeah, feel free to ask for any specific topics that you might be concerned about. And yeah, you're not alone. Don't feel like you have to handle these big problems by yourselves as parents. We're all in this together. We all care about the safety and well-being of our youth. And um, so definitely, like Sammy said, rely on asking for help when you need it. So, all right, well, have a good night or whatever time you're watching this, and we'll see you later.